Yo, sports and the way that humans engage with them has always been super interesting to me. It feels like there's this primal desire in humans to prove that you are better than other people. Maybe not universally, but in one way or another, I think we always seek some type of superiority. And no field makes this tendency more obvious than the field of sports. Sports are the epitome of competition in humans, and the media surrounding them makes this obvious. Obviously, this includes sports anime and sports manga. Because of this primal desire that drives people to play sports, the motivations of sports anime also reflect this. It's often about the main character wanting to become the best or to get to the top of his sport, which is great. It's simple, it's straightforward, and it works for sports stories. There's a simple pleasure in watching Hajime no Ippo and seeing Ippo catch all the leaves for the first time. Watching these characters slowly get better and rise their way up the ranks is just fun. Not to mention that this simple setup leaves a lot of room for really interesting character dynamics, student-teacher dynamics, rivalries, but at the center of it, they all have this strong desire to make it to the top. But all of this is what makes the boxer so much more interesting than any sports manga to me. Because through the main character Yu, the story rejects a lot of these normal conventions of sports stories, most notably with the main character's motivations. Because I've noticed that in a lot of sports manga, probably because of the goals of the manga, the main character tends to be heavily self-determined, heavily self-motivated, and has high hopes and dreams for themselves, which Yu is the exact opposite of. When we start the story, Yu is steeped in a world of depression-driven nihilism, which is usually not a character trait that sports manga would go for in their main character. But the boxer makes it work so well. Yu is a completely apathetic person that has no desire to dominate like many other people have. And so despite being extremely talented and having superhuman levels of strength and agility, he allows himself to get bullied and lets the popular kids beat up on him simply because he has no motivation to fight back. And because of the type of person that Yu is, he has no purpose in life. And he continues through his life purposeless until he meets Coach K. In the world of the boxer, Coach K is the most prolific, most well-known, most legendary boxing coach ever. All of his pupils go on to be world champs and are viewed as monsters of the boxing world. But something that nobody tells you about K before you meet him is he's batshit crazy. He is the epitome of that human need to dominate. So when he comes across Yu and sees that he is exceptionally talented but lacking motivation and has no purpose in life, that nigga is licking his chops. He sees a prime victim for him to take in, groom, and turn into a monster. And this is the complete opposite effect that trainers usually have on their pupils in sports manga. Usually, the main character's coach is a father figure, a mentor that doesn't just teach them about the sport, but teaches them how to survive in the real world. K is none of those fucking things. He doesn't give a fuck about you if it doesn't pertain to boxing, and he will do anything to make sure Yu's focus remains on boxing. And Yu's mindset through all of this is, if I just keep fighting and keep getting better and keep rising up the ranks, eventually I will find a purpose. I will find something in this life that I deem to be enjoyable. And Yu has no sense of self, so he just becomes and does whatever K needs him to. I'm gonna be honest, in the beginning of the story, this is kind of worrying, but at the same time, Yu is so raw and he's so good at boxing that you don't even care. You're just so caught up in the spectacle, just like everybody else, you're just enjoying seeing Yu rise. But another thing that makes the boxer so interesting compared to other sports series is none of the focus is really on Yu getting better at boxing. Throughout the entire story, Yu is just that nigga. He doesn't lose a single fight for basically the entire story. And I think there's only like 1 or 2 fights where there's even the worry in your mind that he might lose. But what the story more so focuses on is Yu's development as a person, or lack thereof. Because over the course of the story, Yu realizes becoming a better boxer and dominating people isn't making me feel better. In fact, it's making me worse. But he's already too deep in, and this is his only purpose in life, so he keeps going. And over the course of the story, you see him delve and fall deeper. As he wins more fights and he becomes more notorious, we see him becoming that monster that K wants him to be. And over time, as he wins more matches, he becomes the antagonistic force. Like 5 or 6 matches in, you're rooting for Yu's opponents. The story frames them as the protagonists. And not only do we feel that way, but the characters around you start to feel that way too. There's another character named Carmen who is the manager of the gym that K owns. And once Yu becomes one of K's boxers, he ends up being in and out of that gym a lot, as you would expect. And so Carmen becomes basically Yu's only human connection. And obviously, when K feels like that becomes a hindrance to Yu's efficacy as a fighter, he separates them. Purely from a standpoint of trying to develop him as a boxer, it makes sense. Because Yu's strength in a boxer lies in his emotionlessness. He doesn't get swept up by emotions like other fighters do. He is there to do a job, he does his job, job, he goes home. And there's this thing the boxer does so well with you, where you can see his character differences on his face and with the way that he's built his body. In the beginning of the story, you can tell just from looking at you that he doesn't have a lot to care for. It doesn't seem like he puts a lot of effort into his hair. He just allows his hair to fall down over his face. However, he's very skinny and his eyes are lifeless. But over time, while his eyes still retain that emotionlessness, they become sharper, almost like the eyes of a tiger or a lion. And in beautiful symbolism, K makes him slick his hair back in this spiky hairstyle. And all of this is done in an effort to make you more intimidating and less human. And you become so one-track minded and focused on this development and trying to find a purpose in his life that it becomes clear over time that the only way for you to be freed is if he loses. So you start rooting for him to lose, but for his own good. Even the way he fights over time. In the beginning of the story, Yu's fighting style is super simple. It's just a simple 1-2. 1-2 and a nigga is out. By the end of the story, Yu literally beats niggas down, damn near kills them. And it's because of this development he's undergone where K has turned him into this unfeeling monster. His body becomes more grotesque and monstrous as his muscles grow into like this weird, almost animalistic looking form. And it feels like Yu is gonna keep going down this path until he becomes a complete, unfeeling, inhuman monster until he meets Jay. Now, Jay is also interesting in a lot of the same ways that Yu is, and of that his motivations have never been to be the best. But instead of being like Yu and being devoid of life and searching for purpose, he is full of purpose and full of life and full of light. And his goal is to give purpose to other people. So when he goes into a specific boxing match, he's not even trying to win. That's what makes his fight so weird to watch. And it's something that's commented on by the people within the story. It's like he always plays to the competition, and he gives that fighter whatever they need out of that fight. So his record ends up being like 36-26, but he's nicer than everybody. He could theoretically beat every single boxer that we've seen so far, but that isn't his motivation. His motivation isn't to dominate, it is to help people. This nigga's basically boxer Jesus. And for Yu, he knows exactly what he needs. 1, he needs human connection, and 2, he needs his ass whooped. And so Jay gives him both of those things, which is why Jay and K work as such good antitheses of each other, because K represents this animalistic primal desire to rise to the top of the food chain, while Jay represents the human reasoning and understanding that allows us to overcome those desires. And Yu is right in the middle of it, being pulled in between these two realities, and us as the reader just have to read and see which way he goes. Now obviously, eventually Jay ends up winning out. Yu quits going down his path of becoming a monster. He stops taking his steroids. Yes, that nigga did take steroids that one time, I ain't forget about that. Which is just more symbolic of his dive into depravity. And after Jay gives him that ass whooping, eventually Yu sees the light and is able to live a happy, fulfilling life. For the sake of spoilers, I won't get into Yu's backstory and everything here, but overall I think Yu as a character is great for dissecting that search for meaning and the great and horrible places that search for meaning leads people. Damn man, I gotta reread The Boxer. That is a good ass manhwa. But yeah, that's all I got for y'all boys today. Let me know what's your favorite sports manga in the comments below, and if you made it to this point of the video, comment down below Boxing Jesus to let me know and to confuse niggas that didn't make it here. Like the video if you liked the video, subscribe to the channel, and yeah man, I'm gone. Damn. I can't forget about them